Hi, I'm Jeffrey Anderson, Senior Lecturer at Ohio University's College of Business. In this video, we'll discuss decision heuristics and biases. We use heuristics every day. Heuristics are mental shortcuts that allow us to solve problems and make judgments quickly and efficiently. These rule-of-thumb strategies shorten decision-making time and allow people to function without constantly stopping to think about their next course of action. Heuristics are helpful in many situations, but they can also lead to cognitive biases. The first bias we'll discuss is the availability bias. The availability bias causes people to overestimate the probability of events that they associate with memorable or vivid occurrences. Because memorable events are further magnified by coverage in the media, the bias is compounded on the social level. One example would be estimates of how likely plane accidents are to occur. The vast majority of the population believes that these accidents are more common than they really are. In reality, people are much more likely to die from an auto accident than a plane accident. The majority of people think the reverse is true, however, because the event is more available in our memory. Looking at the literature, or even just the interactions of daily life, will reveal thousands of examples of the availability bias in action. The confirmation bias happens when you look for information that supports your existing beliefs and reject data that goes against what you believe. This can lead you to make biased decisions because you don't factor in all of the relevant information. A 2013 study found that confirmation biases can affect the way people view statistics. Its authors report that people have a tendency to infer information from statistics that support their existing beliefs, even when the data actually supports an opposing view. This makes the confirmation bias a potentially serious problem to overcome when you need to make a statistics-based decision. We tend to base estimates and decisions on known anchors or familiar positions with an adjustment relative to this starting point. We are better at relative thinking than absolute thinking. For example, if asked whether the population of Turkey was greater or less than 30 million, you might give one or the other answer. If asked what you thought the actual population was, you would very likely guess somewhere around 30 million because you've been anchored by the previous answer. The representative bias is based on the presumption that once people or events are categorized, they share all of the features with other members in that category. For example, believing that all blondes are dumb, looking for someone who is wearing glasses and is dressed businesslike or formally and concluding that they are intelligent, seeing someone hang out with a certain group of people and immediately thinking that they do what that group does. The overconfidence bias occurs when individuals overestimate their ability to predict future events. Many people exhibit signs of overconfidence. For example, 82% of drivers surveyed feel they are in the top 30% of safe drivers. 86% of students at Harvard Business School say they are better looking than their peers. People's confidence in their own decisions tends to outstrip the accuracy of those decisions. Your friend will say he's 100% positive about something and only be right 50% of the time. A disastrous form of this happened in the doomed 1996 Mount Everest expedition described in John Krakauer's book Into Thin Air that resulted in the deaths of many climbers. The hindsight bias occurs when we look backward in time and see mistakes that seem obvious after they have already occurred. In other words, after a surprising event occurred, many individuals are likely to think that they already knew that the event was going to happen. This bias may occur because people are selectively reconstructing events. The hindsight bias tends to become a problem when judging someone else's decisions. Therefore, it's important for decision makers to remember this bias before passing judgments on other people's actions. Let's call this bias the slot machine effect. You put a quarter into a one-armed bandit and pull the lever. You win nothing, no big deal. You put in another quarter, and then another, and so on. After a while, you start thinking, well, I'm invested in this machine now, and it's going to belch an avalanche of quarters any second. The truth is that on every pull of the lever, the same winning probability occurs, which is nearly zero, regardless of how much money you've put in. The money is effectively gone forever. It is a sunk cost. There's no quantifiable expectation of future return, so it's not an investment. Escalation of commitment occurs when individuals continue on a failing course of action, even after information reveals it may be a poor path to follow. It's similar to the sunk cost bias because continuation is often based on the idea that one has already invested in the course of action. For example, imagine a person who purchases a used car, which turns out to need something repaired every few weeks. An effective way of dealing with the situation might be to sell the car without incurring further losses, or donate the car, or use it till it falls apart. However, many people would spend hours of their time and even hundreds or thousands of dollars repairing the car in the hopes that they might recover their initial investment. Thus, rather than cutting their losses, they waste time and energy while trying to justify their purchase of the car. The framing bias refers to the tendency of decision makers to be influenced by the way that a situation or problem is presented. For example, when making a purchase, customers find it easier to let go of a discount as opposed to accepting a surcharge, even though they both might cost the person the same amount of money. Similarly, customers tend to prefer a statement such as 85% lean beef as opposed to 15% fat. It's important to be aware of this tendency because depending on how a problem is presented to us, we might choose an alternative that is disadvantageous simply because of how it is framed. In summary, we talked about heuristics, or shortcuts we use to make decisions more quickly. These shortcuts, or heuristics, result in cognitive biases like the availability, confirmation bias, anchoring and adjustment, the representative bias, the hindsight, overconfidence, and sunk cost bias, as well as escalation of commitment.